Five, four, three, two, one. Good morning, Toastmasters. Good morning, suffragettes. Good morning, scientists. Thank you for getting up early on a Tuesday morning to hear my little speech, Suffragette City. Hunter, Rick Hunter. Rick Hunter was thrown out of high school for blowing up the chemistry lab. He was getting by as a usually unemployed part-time construction worker. He's a member of Mensa. He kept busy by traveling with his fellow cave explorer, Steve Tucker. Rick and Steve explored the country of South Africa in the neighborhood called Rising Star. Here's a cutaway of the Rising Star cave that they went exploring in. You'll see that the entrance is rather gentle, although it does go down 50 to 60 feet. Many cave explorers, many paleontologists, many tourists have been this far. You come here to the Superman's Crawl, far fewer people have gone past that, into a dark, jagged, rocky room. Up here, called the Dragon's Back, Steve and Rick discovered a 7.5-inch gap. It's believed that they are the first two humans to try to enter that gap in the last 20,000 years. They wiggled through and discovered a 40-foot drop. Fortunately, it's a very narrow drop. They were able to use their shoulders, knees, feet, and hands to gently descend themselves where they found themselves in the Dinaledi chamber. This happened on Friday, September 13th. I want you to think about how recent this is, where you were. I know that you were already living in Cupertino. You were already a member of Adelante Toastmasters. Many of you were already well settled into Silicon Valley. That's how recent this is. Rick and Steve had their discovery and they were wondering who to report it to, and they decided to go to Lee Berger. Let me tell you who Lee Berger is. Lee Berger is the Joe Montana, the Oprah Winfrey, the Albert Einstein, the Madame Curie of modern paleontology. Rick made a famous discovery in 2008, and for that, they put his picture on the cover of the Rolling Stone. No, actually, they put his picture on Science Magazine, Scientific America, Time Magazine, and countless numbers of professional publications. But wait a minute. Did I say that Rick Lee? Did I say that Lee made that discovery? No, 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 no. Back in 2008, Lee's 9-year-old son, Matthew Berger, discovered numerous bones that date back nearly 2 million years. Now, we had Rick and Steve brought their discovery to Lee, who agreed that if it was what they thought it was, definitely needed to be further dug up and explored. He, to get funding for who he worked for, which was National Geographic, was going to need better photographs. He was going to need much better evidence. And at that time, there was only one person in South Africa who could get through that 7.5-inch gap that was very well trained on paleontology and very well versed in digital photography. That was Lee's then 14-year-old son, Matthew. So the four gentlemen went off back to the Rising Star Cave. Lee went as far as he could, and he watched Matthew enter the 7.5-inch gap and descend into the Dinaledi chamber, the pitch black Dinaledi chamber. It was quiet. Lee waited. It was quiet for an hour. An hour and a half, he started sweating and trying to think of what he was going to tell Matthew's mother. Finally, at 2 hours In 10 minutes, Matthew popped up with brilliant pictures of the discovery. This was on Sunday, October 6th, 2013. They immediately went home. Lee sent the photographs over to the National Geographic. He called the vice president of National Geographic at 2:30 in the morning. When he got the subject, he was happy to take his call and he approved it. Lee, all right, start putting together a team. So Lee did what almost all of us do. In fact, some of you are doing this right now. Lee jumped on Facebook. He put up a post requesting help. I'll summarize it here. The persons must be skinny and preferably small. Successful candidates could not be claustrophobic. They had to be cavers. They had to hold a relevant master's degree or doctor's work. And they had to come to Johannesburg immediately and accept a blind mission for no pay. Now, who on earth would answer a Facebook post like that? Well, they got 57 replies, and he chose 6. So on Sunday, November 10th, 2013, the team was assembled. These 6 young ladies are the Rising Star Expedition Team, known as the Underground Astronauts. Here's another cutaway of their work area. Notice that it's beginning. It's rather gentle here. Then you come to the Superman's crawl. It's called the Superman's crawl because even these deep scientists cannot get through it without putting one shoulder far in front of the other and sort of just wiggling and shuffling your way through that 10.5-inch gap. Then you come to the dark, scary, jagged chamber all the way up what's called the Dragon's Back, a 7.5-inch gap, using elbows, knees, gut, everything that you can, either down to the Dinaledi chamber, to the fossil site. This work is dirty, it's filthy, it's hot, it seems to go on forever. You're cut off from family and friends, you're cut off from sunlight for hours at a time. These 6 young explorers said, bring it on. Let me tell you the significance of the Rising Star dig. The world's top anthropologists have been working for 50 years in East Africa, and they have found a total of 100 hominoid fossils. The Rising Star team found their first 100 hominoid fossils in 5 days of work. This 19-day expedition and a second team working a nearby cave a few months later found a total of 1,500 hominoid fossils. That's more than double the entire number of hominoid fossils discovered worldwide. Usually, fossils are found partially enclosed by hard rock or sediment. It takes weeks or even months to slowly and carefully separate the fossil from the rock around it. Fossils in the Dinaledi chamber were just sitting on soft, dusty earth. The majority of the bones were articulated. That means the finger bone was right next to the hand bone, connected to the arm bone, connected to the shoulder bone, and so on throughout the body. In a future speech, I'll elaborate on the findings in the chamber, but I want to conclude today listing the heroines of the expedition. Becca Soto, PhD student, Washington, D.C. Marina Elliott, PhD, Canada. Ellen Fuertegal, Master's, Biological Anthropology, Australia. Anna Morris, Master's degree, Ohio State University. Alia Gortov, PhD candidate, Tanzania. Hunter, J. Lindsay Hunter, MRS degree. No, just kidding. She did end up marrying Rick Hunter, the gentleman who I introduced at the very beginning of this speech. And she is a PhD candidate in the University of Iowa. Toastmasters, suffragists, scientists. Some point in your life, you're going to be invited into the dark. You're going to be given the opportunity to go into the dark. It's going to be miserable. It's not going to be well paid, if paid at all. It's going to be separated from your family and your network and all the comforts that you know. Go into the dark because that's where the great discoveries are made. Thank you very much for listening to my speech, Kissing Cousins Chautauqua #2. Mr. Toastmaster.